This is Christian Breton of Quebec City, Quebec. You're listening to the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, September the 7th, 2025. My name's Sheldon. I'm here with Jill, and we thank you for tuning into our program. We're here every week at 10:30 Eastern, 14:30 UTC. We have a lot of stories today, updating you on the situation with public broadcasting and National Public Radio. We have some stories about Gaza, Russia, Pakistan, and the Koreas. So a real international show today. Jill, you'll get things started off with some news from just south of the border for us.
Yes, Vermont Public eliminates 15 positions. And this is via the Vermont Public by Liam Elder Connors. Vermont Public announced Wednesday that it had eliminated 15 positions and changed 2 full-time positions to part-time amid a budget shortfall and mounting financial uncertainty. The cuts, which represent a 14% reduction to the nonprofit's workforce, come just over a month after Congress voted to rescind more than $1 billion in federal funding for public media. Vermont Public will lose $2 million from its current budget due to the rescission bill. The layoffs announced this week are a direct result of the loss of federal funds, Vermont Public CEO Vijay Singh said. This is a heartbreaking moment, Singh said in an interview. We don't do this lightly, and we do it with the intent of setting ourselves up for the best service we can provide for our community. The organization laid off 13 people on Wednesday, and 1 person had their role changed from full-time to part-time. 2 vacant positions were eliminated, and 1 vacant position was changed from full-time to part-time. The cuts will affect almost every department in the organization. No local programs have been cut wholesale as a result of these layoffs. Some programs have lost staff, and a reporter was laid off from the newsroom. He declined to provide more specifics. We are losing some folks who are faces of certain things, but we will maintain those programs at least for the time being because we consider them core parts of our service. Overall, the idea was to maintain as much of what we do while cutting as much cost as we possibly could. The layoffs will save the station at least $1.5 million, though that is a conservative estimate. Departments have also tightened their budgets since Congress passed the rescission bill, and members of Vermont Public Executive Team have all taken pay cuts. The organization is considering other cost-saving measures, Singh said. In addition to the loss of federal funds, the station has lost money in recent years and drawn from its reserves to fill the gap. Singh said he doesn't think another round of layoffs at this scale is likely, but he acknowledged that the cuts will lead to more changes at the organization. There are going to be some things that we have to change. We're going to have to stop doing some things, and we're going to learn a lot about ourselves along the way. And so we are going to be open to repositioning certain roles as a result of all that work. Vermont Public was formed in 2021 when Vermont Public Radio merged with Vermont PBS. The combined organization had more than 100 employees and an annual budget of nearly $20 million. Singh was hired a year ago to lead the nonprofit. Vermont Public isn't the only public media station to cut staff since the rescission bill was signed into law. South Dakota Public Broadcasting announced this month it would cut its workforce by 25%, and American Public Media laid off 30 staffers. Other stations, including KQED in San Francisco, WBEZ in Chicago, and GBH in Boston, cut staff before the rescission bill passed, citing budget shortfalls and funding uncertainty. So this is certainly worrying that they're starting to cut already.
Yeah, the Vermont station, the radio station in particular, and the TV station are ones that many people here in Montreal listen to and support financially as well. So I'm sure they're going to be looking for more funding coming in during funding drives and that sort of thing. But as Gilles said, we have a more national picture of what's going on with these cuts. This is a story by David Bauder of the Canadian Press. PBS and NPR stations struggle with Trump-fueled government funding cuts. Coping with a sudden loss in federal funding, PBS affiliate KSPS in Spokane, Washington, faced a surprise extra hurdle. Many of its contributing members, at one point almost half, lived in Canada, and they were withdrawing support out of anger at President Donald Trump's desire to make the country the 51st member of the United States. When Congress decided this summer to eliminate $1.1 billion allocated to public broadcasting, it left some 330 PBS and 246 NPR stations, each with unique issues related to their communities and history, to figure out what that means. Many launched emergency fund drives and are heartened by the response. The national NPR and PBS networks are reducing expected dues payments, with a philanthropic effort focused on the hardest hit stations is taking shape. No stations have shut down, but job and programming cuts are already beginning. We have definitely seen some attrition from our Canadian members, said Skylar Reap of KSPS Interim General Manager. Pleas for donations exceed expectations in many parts of the country. Long suspicious of a liberal bent to public media news coverage, Republicans in Congress responded to President Donald Trump's wishes in July and eliminated funding for the systems. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which distributes the funding, has taken steps to shut down. In some parts of the country, the answer to pleas for help has exceeded expectations. Public radio station WHQR in Wilmington, North Carolina, raised more than $200,000 in 3 days, filling a $174,000 hole and then some. It's a small community growing fast with an influx of retirees, many who depend on the station's news to learn about their new home, said General Manager Kevin Crane. With $525,000 gone from its budget, Hawaii Public Radio has already raised $650,000 in an emergency fund drive. It's a validation that what you're doing is essential to the community and is appreciated by the community, said Meredith Artley, President and CEO. The 2023 wildfires in Maui and their aftermath were covered steadily by Hawaii Public Radio news reporters. The initial response in terms of support for both stations and the NPR network has been extraordinary, said Catherine Marr, NPR president. People did a lot of work leading up to the vote in actions and calls. When that did not prove convincing, they turned to direct support. Stations across the country have stories that make them smile. The youngster from Florida who collected money for public stations in Alaska, sending a note written in crayon. The regular $300 donor who came in to the PBS Southern California with $100,000 check, one of 3 six-figure donations the station has received. NPR is encouraging donors in wealthier areas to adopt stations in poorer ones, perhaps in an area where a contributor has emotional ties. Public media leaders are also working with a group of philanthropists led by Knight and MacArthur Foundations that is hoping to raise some $50 million to support stations in areas hardest hit by the cuts. Ed Ullman, president and CEO of Alaska Public Media, which represents nearly 24 radio and television stations in the largest state, said he'll be seeking money from this fund. Some stations are already making the difficult decision of cutting staff. In Spokane, for example, 12 of KSPS's 35 staff members have either been laid off, had their hours reduced, or pay cut. REAP is also considering that future seasons of local shows like Northwest Profiles or the Arts Showcase Inland Sessions will have fewer episodes. Similar programming decisions are also being weighed on a national level. While several upcoming shows like Ken Burns' 6-part miniseries, The American Revolution, scheduled for November, are completed, PBS will have to consider making shorter seasons of its series, Kurger said. So the impact is far and wide, but we're seeing just how much these stations mean to people because some very large amounts of money are being received and activities are in the works to raise even more, particularly for stations where it's hard to find local money. So maybe what they're suggesting is people from outside different areas who have a connection to some of those areas chip in and help those poorer stations out.
Saving these stations is extremely important. So in our next news, we have the AM radio bill now supported by 61 senators, 280 representatives in the August surge. Via National Association of Broadcasters, congressional support for the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act accelerated during the August congressional recess, with the bill now backed by 280 bipartisan co-sponsors in the U.S. House of Representatives and a filibuster-proof 61 in the U.S. Senate. Since August 1st, 20 House members have signed on, an extraordinary groundswell of momentum while lawmakers were away from Washington, D.C. This robust support reflects the power of local advocacy. While home in their districts, members of Congress heard directly from their constituents about the importance of preserving AM radio in cars, a service that 82 million Americans depend on for emergency alerts, trusted local news, and cultural programming that binds communities together. We thank the growing bipartisan group of lawmakers standing up for their constituents who depend on AM radio, says the NAB President and CEO Curtis Legate. This support demonstrates a deep understanding that AM radio remains an essential lifeline for emergency alerts, local news, and community connection. With significant momentum behind the bill, NAB urges House leadership to bring it to the floor without delay and preserve this vital service to the American public. So things are continuing into a positive direction. Hopefully, at some point, this will be a law.
We've been following this story for a long time, so it seems every time we do have a report on it, there's more momentum and more people signing on to it. So hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll have that positive result and the law will be passed. A really important story came through this week from Reporters Without Borders. And the headline is, "In Gaza, there will soon be no one left to keep you informed." On Monday, September the 1st, over 270 media outlets from more than 70 countries, and sadly, I have to say that there were no Canadians on the list, which is really somewhat disturbing. They joined forces to demand protection for journalists in Gaza, an initiative started by Reporters Without Borders and the global civic movement Avaz. In a show of solidarity that spanned Brazil, Italy, Lebanon, France, and beyond, these medias blacked out their front pages, put banners on their websites, and interrupted their radio and television broadcasts to convey a clear message. At the rate journalists are being killed in Gaza by the Israeli army, there will soon be no one left to keep you informed. Since the start of August, Israel strikes have killed 11 Palestinian journalists, bringing the total number of reporters killed since the start of the conflict to 220. At least 56 of them slain while doing their job. Together, the newsrooms participating in the blackout condemned the impunity for these murders, demanded protection for journalists in Gaza, and called for the immediate evacuation of those who wished to leave. The campaign was carried out just ahead of the 80th United Nations General Assembly, set to begin on September the 9th, and demanded strong action from the international community. We'll post up the link to this, and you'll see the really extensive list of all the media outlets that backed this motion on the 1st of September. I'm really quite disappointed and quite surprised that there were no Canadian news outlets on here. I don't quite know why. They certainly must have known about it, but they, for whatever reason, have decided not to attach their names to this 270 media outlets from more than 70 countries.
You know, what people don't realize is that pretty much all the news we get are from journalists, Gaza journalists. I mean, journalists from outside are pretty much not allowed to get in. And of course, at the rate that this is going, it kind of shows that, you know what, maybe it's a little bit on purpose at times. You don't want to have the world know what is really happening there. So what's happening with our sun? Well, last week we did kind of end the show with, keep an eye on the sun and the week ahead because something could happen. It happened. Long duration solar flare created a G3 geomagnetic storm. Auroras were visible across many U.S. states and around the world. And there's a lot of pictures. If you go to spaceweather.com, great place to be to see pictures and see what's happening. And solar activity was high. We spent the week with, solar fluxes above 200 and 250 at some point. Conditions right now are more quiet. Things have settled down. And in the week ahead, things should, in general, be relatively quiet in conditions, except if that solar flare does. The sunspot number 150 and the solar flux 172. And to witness all of this, well, you got to turn on a radio and listen.
I'm Thomas Witherspoon of Asheville, North Carolina, and you're tuned to the International Radio Report, 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
In our next news item, we have how Russia is quietly trying to win over the world beyond the West by Juliana Gragnani and Maria Korenyuk, this BBC Global Misinformation Unit. Xavier Gallardo likes to start his morning watching a classical music program on television. It is part of his routine and puts him in the right mood for the day before going to work driving trucks. But one Monday in June, he turned on the television, and instead of music, the screen was filled with images of a war zone. A news report was playing on a channel he had never heard of. What's happening? After 20 minutes, he turned it off. I couldn't connect with it. A green logo at the bottom corner of the screen showed the letters RT. Searching online, he found that this was a Russian channel. Xavier lives in Chile. It is alleged that Telecanal, a privately owned TV channel in the country, has handed over its signal to Russian state-backed news broadcaster RT, formerly known as Russia Today. The country's broadcasting regulator has opened sanction proceedings against Telecanal for a possible violation of broadcasting law and is waiting for the channel's response. Telecanal did not respond to the request for comments. Over the last 3 years, the Russian state-backed news channel RT and news agency and Radio Sputnik have expanded their international presence. Between them, they now broadcast across Africa, the Balkans, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. This all coincides with bans in Western countries. Since 2023, RT has opened a bureau in Algeria, launched a TV service in Serbian, and started free training programs aimed at journalists from Africa, Southeast Asia, India, and China. The broadcaster has also announced it will open an office in India. Sputnik, meanwhile, launched a newsroom in Ethiopia in February. All of this coincides with an apparent weakening from the Western media in some regions. Thanks to the budget cuts and changing foreign policy priorities, certain outlets have downsized and even withdrawn from parts of the world. 2 years ago, the BBC closed its Arabic radio service in favor of its digital-based service, which provides audio, video, and text-based news content. It has since launched emergency radio services for Gaza and Sudan. That same year, Russia's Sputnik started a 24-hour service in Lebanon occupying the airwaves vacated by BBC Arabic. Meanwhile, the U.S. government-funded international broadcasting service Voice of America has cut most of its staff. Russia is like water. Where there are cracks in the cement, it trickles in, says Dr. Catherine Stoner, political scientist at Stanford University. The question that remains, however, is what is Russia's endgame? And what does this apparent creeping of media power in those regions mean in an age with a shifting world order? In February, Russian authorities traveled to Ethiopia for the launch of a new editorial center for Sputnik. Sputnik already broadcasts across parts of Africa in English and French languages and has expanded to include Amharic, one of the official languages of Ethiopia. RT has also reoriented its French language channel to target French-speaking African nations, along with redirecting funding from projects in London, Paris, Berlin, and the US to the continent, according to RT's editor-in-chief. RT is available for free in 10 countries in the region according to its website. Argentina, Mexico, and Venezuela are among them. It's also on cable television in 10 other countries. Ultimately, it's difficult to quantify the impact of Russian state-backed media around the world. RT claims to be available to more than 900 million TV viewers in more than 100 countries and says its content attracted 23 billion online views in 2024. But as Dr. Rasmus Claes Nielsen, professor of communication at the University of Copenhagen, points out, availability is not a meaningful measure of audience size. He also argues that the 900 million viewers figure is extremely unlikely and describes online views as a vague and easily manipulated metric. One thing for sure, they're trying to take over the media landscape, and particularly now that Western countries are just stopping broadcasts. Voice of America is gone. BBC is actually not as present as it used to be. Perfect timing for Russia to invade all of those countries and say, hey, we've got some news outlets.
Yeah, I think we saw the same happen with China when stations on shortwave started to disappear. Those frequencies were quickly grabbed up by Chinese state broadcasting. So we're seeing a similar sort of thing happening with the Russian broadcasting, both radio and television.
Yep.
We have a couple quick international stories. The first one out of Pakistan. Efforts to make Radio Pakistan self-reliant are underway, says their Director General. This comes from Pakistan Press International via Mike Cooper in Glenn Hauser's World of Radio IO group. Efforts are underway to transform Radio Pakistan into a self-reliant entity, according to Saeed Ahmed Sheikh, Director General of the Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation. During a visit to the new broadcasting house in Karachi, Sheikh emphasized the importance of enhancing revenue generation to ensure the organization's financial stability. He called on the staff to actively participate in these efforts, highlighting the need for a collective push towards financial independence. The initiative aims to bolster Radio Pakistan's revenue streams, potentially reducing its reliance on external funding. In addition to his discussions at the new broadcasting house, he visited the HPT Landhi site to assess the progress of the Shortwave project. The project is part of broader efforts to modernize infrastructure and improve service delivery.
In our next item, South Korea halts radio broadcast into North Korea in peace overture. This is by Lee Minji, Yonhap news agency. South Korea has halted the broadcast of a propaganda radio program into North Korea, the Defense Ministry said Monday, as the South seeks to mend frayed ties with the North. The move is the latest in Seoul's reconciliatory gesture, with President Lee Jae-myung vowing to restore inter-Korean ties and resume dialogue with Pyongyang. The Defense Ministry has halted the Voice of Freedom broadcast as part of the effort to ease inter-Korean military tensions, the ministry said in a notice to reporters. South Korea had aired K-pop and news into North Korea through the halted radio program. Last year, it broadcast news on North Korea's deployment of troops to Russia in support of its war against Ukraine. The ministry reportedly halted the broadcast starting earlier in the day, marking the first suspension of the radio program in 15 years. South Korea resumed the radio program in May 2010, following North Korea's deadly attack on the South Korean naval corvette Cheonan. Since taking office in June, Lee has ordered the military to stop propaganda broadcasts along the border with the North and urged activists to stop sending balloons across the border in efforts to reduce tension. Now, I do have a little something to add to this because I did read in a article about the changes in the jamming of North Korea to South Korean broadcasts that, yes, North Korea's jamming is stopped as a result of South Korea stopping the broadcast, but they have used these transmitters and have intensified the jamming on things like KBS World Radio and other broadcasts out there. So they just shifted those jamming transmitters to new frequencies, and actually there was some note that they're actually using multiple jammers on the same frequencies now for some of the KBS broadcasts, for example.
Yeah, taking them and just repositioning them to block something else that they don't want their people to hear.
So we have some upcoming amateur radio de-expeditions and special events.
There is a message from Maxim, Oscar Hotel 7 Oscar, who has been operating from Laos with the call sign X-Ray Whiskey 4 Yankee Yankee. He says stations from the U.S., or even more specifically from the east coast of the U.S., if you're interested in having a 40-meter call, FT8, or who knows, maybe even an SSB one, drop me a message. I am overwhelmed with calls from Japan and Indonesia, but we may find a more secluded frequency spot separately. He's going to be operating from Laos until September the 11th, so not much longer if you want to try to contact him.
Tanzania, CHAS NK80 is active as 5 Hotel 3 Delta X-Ray until September the 23rd. Operations are from 30 to 10 meters using CW and FTR, FT4, FT8 during his spare time.
And from the island of Tonga, Massa, Juliet Kilo 1, Juliet X-Ray Zulu, is operating as Alpha 35 Juliet Kilo. Until September the 12th. Look for him on 80 all the way down to 6 meters, depending on propagation and conditions. So that's just for a few more days. So you better check that one quickly.
And we do have a contest, the ARRL September VHF contest, going on from 1800 Zulu September 13th to 03 Zulu September 15th, organized by the American Radio Relay League. The bands are all amateur bands 6 meters and up. Modes, all legal modes are permitted, while CW and SSB phone are the most common, MSK 144, FT8, and FM. So other popular modes include PSK 31, FSK 441, and JT 65. So this is, bring out your scanner radios, and if you have some higher end equipment which is capable of SSB, could be very interesting, and hopefully maybe 6 meters could be up for that weekend.
Yeah, some people may know you can even, there's a category in which I've tried out a couple times in this contest to use FM mode on simplex on 2 meters, for example. Nobody else seemed to want to do it. So you never know what you can hear with your and contacts you can make when you go on simplex if you've got a good antenna. And
we are out of time.
We thank you for tuning in to our show. Lots of good information for you today. If you'd like to reach us, our email address is radioreport@yahoo.com. Our show is live streamed and archived at ckut.ca here in Montreal. Our Facebook group, International Radio Report, we're still pushing our way to the 1,000 member mark, so please consider joining. And to listen to our show at your convenience, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@IRR, and we invite you to subscribe there as well. That's it for this time. Talk to you again next Sunday morning here on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal for the International Radio Report. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.